sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. We are coming to you right before Shabbat, but a wonderful way to welcome in Shabbat, not with a professional athlete, not with a professional coach, but rather a professional podcaster. Jamie Hirsh from the podcast Menschwarmers of the Canadian Jewish News out of Toronto. We've known of each other, but this last few weeks, I've gotten many emails and phone calls. You have to locate Jamie Hirsh because not only was he a Menschwarmer, but he was a champion on Jeopardy with Ken Jennings. And when Ken Jennings asked, what do you do or what are you passionate about? He said, I have a Jewish sports and faith podcast. And people said, Rabbi, so do you. So for the first time, we are connecting Jamie Hirsh and Rabbi on the Sidelines and Menschwarmers. Jamie, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Really excited to be here. I would say professional podcaster is very generous. I think I podcast for beer money at best, but it's semi-pro. Let's say that it's like D-level baseball back in the day.
Semi-pro. I love it. Well, me too, because I should be writing a sermon right now, but you're writing it for me, depending on what you say here in the next 20 minutes. So I always say in this podcast, we do Kodesh and Chol, we do sacred and we do ordinary. I actually heard about you last year when you did a little podcast about me and my friend Rabbi Jared Grover in Toronto when the Blue Jays were playing the Dodgers, and Rabbi Grover and I did a little bet about who would win, but it was less about who would win and about where we would give charity to. And so I asked usually this question last, but let's talk about it first because you're a Menschwarmer and I'm a Rabbi on the Sidelines. It truly is a shidduch, it's a match made in heaven. The question is there faith in sports?
There absolutely is faith in sports. I think we see it on display all the time. I think it is almost always of the Christian variety. And that's something we've talked to some athletes about in the past. That has been interesting to hear. What is it like being the only Jewish player on a team when there's a team prayer before you go out on the field? What's it like being the only player on a team with lots of people who are incredibly religious? And I think we've heard, mixed results, mixed things from people. I think, most athletes we've talked to, I would say, have not experienced a ton of, outright anti-Semitism. It's not, we're lucky that hasn't been the era of the last several decades in the United States, although knock on wood. But there is something that makes you feel a bit odd, I'm sure, when, there is this, normative Christianity faith that is predominant in American sports. So I think, it's interesting that we haven't seen a ton of, well, we have seen lots of Jewish athletes, obviously. There haven't been a lot of even, let's say, observant, Jewish athletes. And in part because of what that would entail in terms of commitment to something other than sports on weekend days, growing up, things like that.
I don't want to test you, but speaking of observance in sports, I don't know if you watched the NCAA Division III tournament last week with Yeshiva University and Emory. What's your thought about the Yeshiva University team making to the Sweet 16 for the first time?
I think it's been great. They had the run, I think that was canceled because of COVID. That would have been their their best years, their best year to really contend. And they're a great example because Yeshiva doesn't play any sports, I think, accommodated in that regard. Given that most college and pro sports, are really at the end of the day a TV product, it's hard to imagine anyone accommodating a observant athlete beyond that. It would be interesting to see with Jacob Steinmetz, who's an observant baseball player, what he can and will have to do to maintain it. So far the prototypical example is Sandy not playing on Yom Kippur, and that hasn't really been followed by many other Jewish baseball players, for example. We haven't seen it. And not even in as important games, just because of the way the schedule is. It's not the World Series. It's usually not the World Series anymore.
Right. And let's talk about the Tamir Goodman effect. A good friend of mine. I'm not sure if you had him on the show yet. But
I haven't had him on the show, but we met him a few months ago at a UJ event.
Amazing. So actually, was that the one with Bruce Pearl?
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. So Tamir was here a couple of weeks ago, right after that, with our FCS Faith Connection and Sport Conference. I hope you'll join us for 2.0 Super Bowl week next year. Maybe Radio Row will be at the Super Bowl, but hopefully Jewish podcast Radio Row will be at Faith Connection and Sport Conference. But Tamir's story is, I guess, extraordinary in terms of he had the ability to do it and he handed back that scholarship. Your thoughts on Tamir, his story? He's I don't know how old you are, but I'm 45 and I'm his age. And when he was going through that in '99, I handed my basketball coach in Syracuse, New York, the article saying this is why I can't play on Friday nights too. How do you think that Tamir Goodman effect sort of has brought Judaism and sports along the line so that kids can say, yes, I actually can do both, and we can be Menschwarmers and rabbis on the sidelines?
Well, I think it's huge to see the example. I think it's that sort of the genesis of our podcast. We like to joke is us sitting around watching sports saying, "Hey, do you know that guy's Jewish?
Yep.
You know this person's Jewish," and that's, I think, a game that Jews play all over the world for all of history. We take a lot of pride in second-hand achievements or third-hand achievements, and seeing people accomplish things at a high level. I think lots of groups do that, and I think it's not a bad thing. It's nice to see that. Part of what we celebrate is the athletes who are shining examples for a younger generation and people who do that. So to see someone like Tamir say, these are the requirements of my faith, this is what's necessary for me to play that level, I think it could be, I'm sure it was inspiring for lots of people, and a very level of faith, of observance as well, in terms of, what do I have to do that makes me feel comfortable? And I mean, obviously within Judaism, lots of debate and different strains in terms of what people adhere to, things like that. But to find what works for you as an athlete, as a student athlete, I think is critical and an important thing for Jewish athletes going forward.
And so let's take your two journeys. Let me hear your Jewish journey first, and then we'll hear your sports journey, and let's put it together as a Jeopardy champion. Jewish journey. Who are you?
I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in Toronto. I went to Hebrew Day school growing up, Jewish summer camp. That was one of my other Jeopardy.
Which place?
Sorry?
Which camp?
Camp Walden in Ontario, which
nice.
I don't know that we had a ton of Californian. There's always been a few Americans who went to Walden, but not many from California necessarily. Jewish day school, Jewish summer camp. I grew up in, I believe it styled itself at the time a traditional egalitarian synagogue, despite the contradiction in terms.
Can we get a rabbinic shout out? Who was the rabbi growing up?
Rabbi Ed Elkin was his name.
Got it. Very nice.
And been still live in the same neighborhood, pretty involved in the Jewish community, I guess. Been doing this podcast now for Canadian Jewish News for the last 6-7 years. And it's been a lot of fun. Obviously we've talked to a lot of Jewish athletes, sports writers, people involved in the sports world in various ways. We've been able to, we got PGA accreditation a couple years ago, so we're going to cover some golfers PGA events a few times, which has been nice, and other events as well. But it's been a great way to sort of combine two loves, I think, or two important parts of my personality, and talk about sport through a Jewish lens, and get involved in that. It's been a lot of fun.
I guess I would ask, is there a difference between what I do and you do? Do you interview only Jews who are in sports, or are you open to other faiths and how that how that integrates into what you're doing?
We have an ecumenical approach. I would say we've had a few people who aren't Jewish who have been involved in the Jewish sports world. We had a director on a few months ago who had directed a documentary about the he was Jewish, but been very involved in the team and directing the documentary. Had some other. We had a friend of ours.
Was that Ron Dyens?
Yeah, that's right. Ron Dyens also not Jewish, but he is the.
I had him last week.
Of the butterfly film, which
amazing.
I sadly didn't win at the Oscars.
Yes,
it was the favorite as far as there's betting odds for the animated short Oscar. I guess there's even betting odds on that. We had a man of the clock on a few years ago to talk about the legalities as far as Judaism is concerned of sports betting, because I think that was a perfect subject when things were starting to get legalized. I know sports gambling is not legal in California yet, but I'm sure people are finding their ways. And just talking about the what Judaism thinks about that, and different approaches to it. So
Who would you say is your audience?
Our audience is, I would say, sports fans, young and old. I would say it's a lot of people. It's a lot of uncles and nephews from who gets referred to the podcast. That's where we hear people talking about it. It's friends and family. I would say our audience tends to be pretty Canadian because that's who publishes us. But there's nothing particular. We're focused on sports around the world and the U.S. obviously. I would say like the big four sports and all the big American sports, and then international competitions. Obviously, we talked about Olympians and people competing at the international level when applicable. And yeah, that's always want to grow our audience to reach any Jewish sports fans. I think it's Jewish again. If you've sat on your couch with your friends and said, "Hey, who's Jewish?" That guy. Really, I didn't know. Oh, yeah, he's Jewish. He went to day school, or my cousin knows him, or something like that. Then you should listen. You should listen to our podcast.
Definitely comes to play in the World Baseball Classic when you're like, "Whoa, I didn't realize that." What was your thoughts about last week beating Nicaragua, the Netherlands, and definitely not the Dominican Republic? That didn't work out so well, but it seems like they put the eggs in the right basket.
It was better than last time when they got perfected by the Dominicans. I think his team Israel at the World Baseball Classic has been a sort of like lodestar for Jewish sports fans the last little while. I think this was a good showing, but I have some questions about where it goes from here, because I think they are this year. Honestly, I think they were a max rated fragment away from maybe making to the next round. And it's tough because they keep being in a division with or a pool with really, really good teams, and it's hard to beat them. The Magic of 2017, when they beat the Dutch and they beat Cuba and made it to the second round, they beat Korea as well. That was sort of shocking, but it's baseball, anything can happen. We spoke to Alex a couple of years ago, and he sort of hinted that might be in the offing for him. I think ultimately turning down an opportunity to play for America again, he was on the 2017 that won for you, would have been too much. And I'm not saying he should have necessarily, but I think getting the top talent will be critical in putting that team over the top. If that can line up next time, there's always Jewish baseball players. There's always guys coming up. There's always going to be a next Jewish baseball player. We haven't had a year without an all-star caliber Jewish baseball player in the last probably 3 decades. So just getting those guys on the team, getting that team together, I think you can have a real run at it. But they won't make the Olympics in all likelihood. I mean, they try, but there's it's only a 16 tournament, so I think there's like one spot that they could possibly qualify for, and you have to do it with people who aren't otherwise engaged with professional duty. So, anyways, all that to say, I think the Israel baseball team is a great thing for Jewish sports fans, for Jewish American sports fans to watch. A team mostly of Jewish Americans play. I don't know that there is a huge development of the game in Israel, and that has been sort of part of the journey for Israel baseball. And they've done what they can, but at the end of the day, you're sort of up against demographics, and there's not that many baseball diamonds in Israel. It's not as popular sport, obviously, as basketball and soccer. And growing the game locally, I think is something that needs to happen to make that next fail. In the way that the Israel basketball team is not American Jews for the most part. It's Israeli basketball players.
Yeah, the couple of months ago or last year, we had Ryan Lavarnway, not just on the show, but actually here, and his story of not making the American team and then making the Israeli team, and then America coming back and say, "You're on the team," and he said, "No, I have my jersey and it's right here, it's Israel." And then really rediscovering his roots through sports. And even we just mentioned Tamir Goodman, but Coach Bruce Pearl, really rediscovering his Jewish roots through the Maccabiah games, having John Shire, Todd Golden. I love when these, I don't know if you put out a graphic or somebody else did recently with it's March Madness literally happening right now. And like, who are the Jewish coaches? 3 out of 4 in the Final Four last year. There's a lot of Jews making some pretty amazing things happen in the sports world right now. What do you attribute to that?
There's something about college basketball that seems to really attract Jewish coaches. I'm not sure what it is. If it's something about the guys who become coaches are probably like the 14th man on the team who doesn't quite make it, doesn't necessarily start, doesn't necessarily play a lot of games, but like loves the game and is like gritting and grinding out there, and I feel like that has been a fair number of these guys who are coaches now. John Cryer was a real player.
Yes.
Todd Golden, I think, was more. I think he played, but anyways, I'm just saying that it's guys who are grinding. There's like a huge amount of Jewish NCAA coaches, like there's Jewish Coach Association, and it's very cool to see the stuff they do. And yeah, seeing 3 out of 4 last year was obviously very cool. I think and obviously a Jewish coach winning last year is very cool as well.
Yes. I don't know. Are you familiar with the JCA, the Jewish Coach Association? It's growing actually at the Final Four. It's now one of the biggest events of the Final Four, both men's and women.
Yeah, I know. I saw their event. I was there a couple of years ago. I didn't actually get to attend the event, but I've seen what they do, and obviously it's very cool that they are so involved and getting people together. Sorry about this camera.
No, don't worry about it. And so tell us about the journey to Jeopardy. That's how I knew of you before, but it sort of exploded in the Jewish world. What was that experience like? I wish I knew you were here, just literally down the road at Sony Studios in Culver City. But the journey to Jeopardy, was that a lifelong dream? How did that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the anecdotes I told was about how when I was at Jewish summer camp, they did a staff Jeopardy tournament every year. They won that a few times. I watched as a kid. My mom liked Wheel of Fortune, so obviously Jeopardy was on after that.
Same studio right there. I hope you got to see the set.
No, you don't. Yeah, it's too bad we don't. I think they tape on
no.
alternate days, but they didn't let us spin the wheel just for good luck.
Oh no.
But I'd always wanted to be on. I tried out, I think back in 2010 or 2011, and I didn't. I tried out. They did in-person interviews at the time. I didn't make it, which is to say they didn't call. You're on the list, and they call or they don't call. And now they do an anytime test you can take whenever you want. Listeners out there, if you want to go on Jeopardy, go to the Jeopardy website and take the test. Do it whenever you want. It's very easy to do. They just ask you some questions. If you score above a certain threshold, they can call you and take you in for a Zoom interview. And based on that, you might get called for the big show. So I did that Zoom interview like back last July, I think. And then they called me in December to tell me I'd be on the show, and flew out in end of January or beginning of February to tape. So was in LA for a few days. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, playing trivia for someone who likes trivia is a good time. It's just intense and for a lot more money than a free beer at the bar or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would believe it's a $32,000 champion. I'm assuming there were some California taxes in there. But how do you study for randomness? I guess how do you do that? And when you did the studying match the test?
I think the best way to study for Jeopardy is by watching Jeopardy and looking at old questions. It's not going to cover everything, but it does lay the groundwork. And maybe like 40% of Jeopardy questions, I would say, have some sort of hook in them, where if you think about it, you can get the answer even if you don't know what it is. But there's some alternate way of getting to the answer. So understanding the way that Jeopardy questions are asked, understanding the form, I think gets you some of the way there. There's certain things that people have talked about as being sort of like Pavlovian responses, that if you see Welsh poet, it's almost always Dylan Thomas, because I don't know a second Welsh poet, and I don't think anyone else does either. That's not fair. I'm sure there's lots of other great Welsh poets out there. I don't know any others. But if you see Welsh poet, it's usually that. If you see something about the creator of or something to do with the periodic table, it's Mendeleev. There's certain things that just sort of like clue you in. So watching old Jeopardy stuff is good. And then having just like a wide knowledge, it doesn't have to be very deep, is good too. So James Holtower is one of the great winners of all time. He talk about reading kids' books, on subjects. I've got young kids. I think the same thing. Reading a book that's geared to fifth graders about Greek mythology will certainly give you all the knowledge you probably need to.
Interesting.
So that's part of it as well, just sort of making sure your knowledge is wide. And honestly, I mean, they ask a fair amount about like current events, recent events, things like that. Yep. So just being a literate, interested person in the world, I think, goes some distance as well.
Very Talmudic answer in terms of the depth versus the breadth. I really like that a lot. I guess for Jewish day schools out there, do you think Jewish day school education helped you in the journey to Jeopardy?
Good question. I honestly, the answer is yes, but it's not going to be the way that they would want to hear. I was a very bored young teenager, and There was definitely a year where I recall for some reason we had bought like like the New York Times like almanac that had like it was like a world fact book, thick like doorstopper, but just had information about like how many citizens this country have, things like that, lists and stuff like that. And I remember reading it one year at school while I should have been focused on something else. Just like I'm
Zionism. That's good.
Honestly, by that point, I was probably pretty. I knew my Hebrew education wasn't necessarily going forward beyond the 8th grade. So just reading that, in my lab during class probably gave me a foundation of facts that I still draw on. So unfortunately, maybe not the way the Hebrew school would have wanted, but still, I learned something in a school. They should be proud of that.
Beautiful. And talk about the title of Menschwarmers. Did that come from nowhere? How did it come out? And on Jeopardy, why did you decide to bring that fact up on Jeopardy?
So the Jeopardy thing is interesting. I know a lot of people are like so nervous about the anecdotes, which is understandable because it's like there's a good joke that like after you go on Jeopardy, the most interesting thing about you is that you went on Jeopardy. Your anecdote would instantly be replaced by that. So they do a questionnaire and they ask you to fill out some information and they sort of go through that with you. And if you're lucky enough to come back for a few episodes like I was, then you go to. So Menschwarmers was second, and they're like, "This is great. It's a great thing to talk about, chat about it with." So that's pretty much it. It was on the list of things I talked about. They also ask you to disclose any sort of other media that you do. Obviously, if you're going to be on other TV shows, then that's important. If you're otherwise engaged, I know there's a guy who was at the tournament champions last year, Aaron Levine. He was a broadcaster up in Seattle, and I saw him say somewhere that like if he worked for the TV station that played Jeopardy, he wouldn't have been allowed to go on. Even though it was just an affiliate, like he had to disclose that sort of thing. So
biased, yeah.
They work on all that stuff.
And then so Menschwarmer, how do you come up with that name? And it seems like it's been a good name to stick with.
Honestly, I think we came across it honestly. I have seen it elsewhere since. I know it's like a good rec league team name for a Jewish team, and we don't claim sole exclusive rights to it. But we've been calling ourselves the Menschwarmers for a long time, and people love the name. So I think we got a good one.
And in this world of anti-Semitism, you said you've been in this business for about 6 to 7 years. Do you think that your place in the Jewish sports world and sports world in general has helped tell the story of maybe people that would otherwise not hear the stories that you're telling, things that I'm telling? I know, just want to acknowledge you're in Toronto, and the last few weeks have been not easy in the Toronto Jewish community with shootings in synagogues, Temple Israel, Michigan. It's not easy for us.
Okay, I obviously it's something we talk about, and I would say like every time we have to talk about it, I feel like I'm rolling my eyes and doing it through gritted teeth. But it's like I can't believe we have to talk about this game. That in the world of soccer and wrestling and basketball, there's been all these controversies. I watched the documentary that Kyrie Irving tweeted about that he got in all that trouble for. Just
so why did you
with some understanding?
Yeah, I just want to interrupt you 1 second. So I did not watch it until I was on the steam room with Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley on the air asked me, "Rabbi, did you watch that?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I better watch that show because I need to be able to talk about it." And you're actually the only other Jewish person that I've spoken to that actually has watched that. And interesting because we're doing this sort of in parallel universes here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't very good, and I think being convinced by it is probably exposes your preconceived biases and notions. All of that to say is I don't love having to talk about anti-Semitism. I think there's a responsibility as a person involved in the Jewish world to do so, and we've had guests on to talk about it. When I'm blanking on his name now, Myers Leonard.
Great guy.
Hayward. On stream one time, and we had a podcast about that as well, and every time I just say the same thing. I'm just like, well, shouldn't be doing anti-Semitism. There's too much anti-Semitism in sports. It's gratifying to see when there's a unified, solid response against it, and it's disappointing when there isn't. And I think it's an important thing to talk about and keep in your sights. But to be honest, our goal, I think, is rising up the Jewish accomplishments and celebrating accomplishments rather than always having to focus on the detraction. And I don't think it's one versus the other necessarily. I'm not going full Brett Stevens on it, but unfortunately, I think it's something you got to do, and we do it when we need to. But I wish we did. I wish we never had to talk about it again.
I love Myers Leonard. I think what he did was really a beautiful thing. He came to our synagogue and school, and he literally was crying watching the kids in tefillot. And when we did our podcast after, he said, "My biggest mistake has become my greatest blessing." And when you see somebody like him, as opposed to other athletes who sort of double down on their
Sure.
actions and tweets, you realize that there is also hope and tshuva and ways to turn around, that you can also teach those mistakes to our own children too.
Definitely. It was gratifying to see what he did.
And so let's conclude with what do you see coming up in the next couple months in the sports world? What do you have on your deck of Menschwarmers that we can look forward to out here in Los Angeles? And we hope that you do join us as part of the press on 2.0 of Faith Connection Sports, and also most importantly LA 2028 here in Los Angeles. We hope we would love to host you guys as Menschwarmers and Rabbi on the Sidelines counterparts.
That would be great. I'd love to come out. I would love to go to an Olympics. I've never been, and LA is.
Me neither.
LA and Utah are the close ones. Well, it's in your backyard, so you don't trust. I will. I should be back in LA for some sort of Jeopardy postseason that they do now. Either
no way.
Well, so because I won 3 games, I'm sort of on the cusp of who gets typically called for the Tournament of Champions. I'm not expecting that I'll necessarily get called for the Tournament of Champions, but they also do a wild card for the Tournament of Champions. So I would think at a minimum I would get called for that. I don't know if any of your listeners are Riviera or other Jewish golf clubs in the neighborhood, but if they want to have me out for the day and to golf, I'm not going to turn down the offer.
You can do that at Hillcrest. All you people at Hillcrest, make sure we got it.
Last time when I was out, I wanted to golf because it's been winter in Canada. I haven't been able to, but I couldn't put it together, and I didn't want to try one of the munis in LA coming in without clubs. But between the rentals and all that, and studying for Jeopardy, I didn't really think it was worth trying rental park or something like that. Anyways, but always excited about the baseball season starting. We'll have a baseball preview podcast coming in soon. NHL and NBA playoffs. NBA playoffs maybe not super relevant, depending on if Portland wins the play-in game and Denny gets to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, we're excited about that. And then there's stuff going on in the summer. There's a lot of Jewish golfers who have been having really solid weeks. Daniel Berger almost won a couple weeks ago. At the time we're taking this, David Lipsky is the 36-hole leader at the Housefire Championship. So who knows? It could be a Jewish golf champion soon. So something we're going to talk about. Hopefully, go out and see them at the Canadian Open in a few months.
That would be actually amazing. And there's chaplains on every major sports team. I've actually interviewed several chaplains to talk about faith in sports. I'm not sure if Jeopardy contestants have chaplains, but if you do need one, I am right here. So just let me know. Happy to Uber you over to Culver City, get you that round of golf, and make sure you get a minion in there too.
Sounds great. That would be great. One of the people I played against was a preacher. Actually, she was a Methodist preacher. And when we were in the green room, I had a question. There was some question about the New Testament, and I asked her about it, and she gave me a detailed answer about something Paul had written. And I'm like, this is all, it's like you're speaking gibberish to me. I have no idea what you're talking about, but it's an important thing to learn. And that's actually, honestly, that's a subject I don't know enough about that I need to bone up on for any return. So if any rabbis see me reading New Testament, still on the team, just focusing.
Amazing. Well, this has been a true treat before Shabbat here in Los Angeles. I know thankfully the clocks changed, so before Shabbat for you in Toronto, as I said before. I'm from Syracuse, New York, so I grew up a AAA Blue Jay fan.
Go Sky Chiefs, right? Yeah.
Sky Chiefs, actually, when I was in 7th grade, was the strike. There was no major leagues, and so I got to watch Carlos Delgado, Sean Green, and Alex Gonzalez go to the IL championship against actually Columbus Clippers, who on that team had no other than Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, and Mariano Rivera. So I was privy to very cheap international league tickets, watching true stars that grow. But this has been an amazing treat. I look forward to doing more work together from coast to coast, from country to country. Rabbi on the Sidelines, the intersection of sports and faith, with Jamie Hirsh from Menschwarmers. If you haven't heard of that podcast, make sure you take a look on that, Canadian Jewish News, and all the different podcast channels. Jamie, wonderful to meet you. A Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to working with you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.